Thank you everybody for joining us today. My name's Alison and I'm the Nova Scotia Program Manager with the Community Housing Transformation Centre. And I'm the Program Manager who is responsible for the Community Housing Growth Fund. So the Growth Fund was released last Wednesday, October 26th, and we're really excited that it's finally been released. And we're looking forward to working with you over the next year and a half on your projects and seeing the change in the Nova Scotian community housing sector that this work is going to inevitably bring. There is going to be time at the end of the presentation to ask questions that you'd like to have answered straight away. But if you do have questions that you want to have answered straight away, please feel free to raise your hand. Renee is going to be keeping an eye on the chat section as well. So if you'd rather put your question in the chat, then please feel free to do so. So firstly, for those of you who haven't worked with the Centre before, I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction as to who we are. The Community Housing Transformation Centre is a pan-Canadian non-profit organisation that was founded in 2019 by a network of organisations. If everybody wouldn't mind going on to mute just to eliminate some of the background noise, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So the Community Housing Transformation Centre was founded by a network of organisations representing and serving the needs of Canada's community housing sector. The centre is motivated by the prospect of building on existing expertise, networks and resources to drive transformation, sustainability and growth. Since December of 2019, the Centre has supported 342 projects with funds totaling close to 23 million. And out of those, 15 projects have happened in Nova Scotia, valued at close to $974,000. This total doesn't include the money being allocated toward the Growth Fund by the Centre. So it's this expertise with funding community housing projects that makes the Centre really well placed to distribute the Growth Fund with tailor-made software, already established processes and existing knowledge and expertise. And you'll see here a little bit with regards to our vision and our mission as well. So the Community Housing Growth Fund. In May 2021, I'm sure all of you who are here today are aware, the Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Commission made 17 recommendations to increase the supply of and access to affordable housing in Nova Scotia. And that included a recommendation that Nova Scotia makes a quick start investment to create a community housing growth fund in consultation with the community housing sector. The Growth Fund is an acknowledgement of the vital role that the nonprofit and cooperative housing sector plays in creating healthy, vibrant and affordable communities. And the fund is going to be used to support projects and initiatives that strengthen the community housing sector in Nova Scotia. The Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing has approval to commit up to $2.5 million to the fund. And the Community Housing Transformation Centre has also committed $550,000. So the application portal, as I mentioned, is now open and will stay open until early 2024. Funding agreements have to be signed by March 31st, 2024 at the latest. So as part of the Community Housing Growth Fund, there have been 3 funding streams established and 1 investment as well. So as you can see up on the screen right now, the 3 funding streams are capacity building, planning and pre-development, research and innovation, and the investment is in the Provincial Nonprofit Housing Association. So as community housing providers or community housing groups, cooperative housing groups, you are eligible to apply for the 3 streams: capacity building, planning and pre-development, and research and innovation. The capacity building stream focuses on projects that look to strengthen, grow, and transform community housing organizations. Eligible activities can include things such as strategic planning and organizational reviews, project and property management support, building condition assessments, portfolio reviews, mergers, acquisition planning, and other activities that strengthen the capacity of the organization or of the sector. So for this stream, applications can be submitted for up to $50,000. The planning and pre-development stream was brought about because it was noted as a key funding piece, which is often missing from grants available to community housing sector groups. This grant stream is going to cover activities such as the development of preliminary plans, site surveys, risk assessments, architectural drawings, and engineers reports, as well as other activities that are going to help community housing organizations continue along the development continuum. Applications for this stream are also available for up to $50,000. The research and innovation stream commits to supporting activities such as researching housing need in communities and among underrepresented groups, researching innovative construction methods and materials to improve sustainability and affordability, gathering data to support long-term strategies for the stabilization, transformation, and growth of the community housing sector. Another key part of this stream is going to be projects aimed at activities that build capacity to develop innovative evidence-based approaches to increasing affordable housing supply. For this stream, we invite applications up to $10,000. So as I mentioned earlier, there is the investment portion of the Community Housing Growth Fund, and that's in the Provincial Nonprofit Housing Association. Many of you who are around this table have participated in the Build Together work that was undertaken at the Cody Extension out of St. FX. The data and the resources that were gathered throughout this process have been used to help found the development of a new provincial association for nonprofit housing providers, where an interim board has been struck. So that exciting work happened last week at the founding meeting that was being held in Antigonish, and I know a lot of you who are present at the meeting today were also present at the meeting last week as well. Who can apply for this funding? This fund is available for organizations working in Nova Scotia's community housing sector. Nonprofit housing providers, cooperative housing providers, and nonprofit organizations who are currently working in the nonprofit housing sector, but potentially not as direct housing providers, but who may wish to increase capacity within their organization for work focusing on nonprofit housing, or who are working towards becoming involved in the building and maybe operating of affordable or nonprofit housing. Organizations who are based outside of Nova Scotia are eligible to apply for this funding, but only if the activities are taking place in Nova Scotia. The final stream, the research and innovation stream, invites applications from the previously mentioned groups, but also recognizes that researchers and post-secondary institutions may want to access the Growth Fund for their work pertaining to community housing in Nova Scotia. All applications have to come in from registered nonprofits, and researchers and academics who are looking to access this fund will need to partner with a nonprofit organization who would submit the application. The priority areas were developed in partnership with the community housing sector organizations, and the following priority areas were developed for the Community Housing Growth Fund. The first is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this includes first voice and underrepresented groups. The second is addressing systemic barriers to housing. The third priority area looks at advancing capacity building opportunities within the sector. The fourth is leveraging regional government and cross-sectoral resources and supports. The hope with the Community Housing Growth Fund is that it will place organizations in a better stead to be able to leverage these regional government and cross-sectoral resources and supports. The fifth priority area is providing navigation and support services to people in housing need. And the final priority is one that will be the focus of the centre, and that's to make sure that the fund is geographically equitably distributed across the province. So applicants to the Growth Fund are going to be required to meet at least one of these first 5 priorities. So the online process, all applicants are strongly encouraged to meet with the Nova Scotia Program Manager, which is myself, before submitting an application. Some of you may already be familiar with the Centre's online grant application platform called Portico, and all Community Housing Growth Fund applications will be submitted through this platform. Once you have logged onto Portico, you need to click on the tab on the left-hand bar that reads Grant Applications, and this will take you to the list of funds. I will say if you do have any problems with the Portico platform, please reach out to Suzanne, who helps administer the platform, and her contact information will be on the final slide. So the first thing you'll do is click on the New Application button, and this will show the funds. So the current funds that are available in Nova Scotia are the 3 Community Housing Growth Fund streams, as well as the Community-Based Tenant Initiative. If you are interested in applying for the Community-Based Tenant Initiative Fund, please reach out to Renee, as she is the Program Manager responsible for overseeing those applications in Nova Scotia. And she's also the Program Manager responsible for seeing other applications within the rest of the Atlantic provinces. For organizations who are within Nova Scotia or whose activities are planned for Nova Scotia, the Sector Transformation Fund, both for the local projects and the sectoral impact projects, aren't currently available at this time. The reason for that is that with the Growth Fund, most of the activities that are eligible for these funding streams are now covered under the eligible activities of the Growth Fund, along with other activities that weren't previously eligible for funding under either of the Sector Transformation Funds. So moving on, how to create a new application. Once you've chosen the stream that you wish to apply for, it will bring you to this page. And on this page is where you enter the name of your project and confirm the eligibility criteria. For the name of the project, this field is limited to 120 characters, so you do need to keep it brief. Maybe add a little bit in there, a bit of a description about, or have a descriptive piece about maybe the plot of land you're applying for, or the intended outcomes of, so development of land survey for community housing group X, something like that, something that is unique to your group, but has a descriptive element to it. So the application fields, you can see those up at the top of this slide. I'm going to go through each of these application fields. And the first one is the project details, and under the project details tab of your application, you'll have the opportunity to change your project name if you want to. The other fields within this first tab include a brief summary of the project, the priorities, which as you can see here, are listed as a checkbox selection. The other fields are your partners, who your partners will be in this project and what their involvement will be, what some of the challenges are that you might face in the implementation of your project and how you would tackle them, and how your organization will ensure the long-term sustainability of the project. The next section of the application looks at the objectives, needs, and outcome of your project. So the screenshot that you see here in front of you is specific for the planning and pre-development stream, because the objectives do differ from stream to stream, although there is a little bit of overlap. So you would select your objective and then fill in the needs. And the needs are what has been identified as a gap, a missing resource, or a requirement in your community. And the outcomes should be tied to the objective that's chosen. The outcomes would show how you know that the objectives have been met, what those milestones would look like. You have to choose one, but you can also choose more objectives. You can add in as many objectives as you would like from the list. And for each objective added, another needs and outcomes field will come up. Moving on to the next section of the application, the timeline and activities. You will be asked to input the dates that you anticipate each portion of the activities to be operational within. The phases that you'll need to input the dates for are planning and initiation, execution, and closure. And in addition to the dates, each section of the timeline has got a field with which you can input your primary activities, which are the activities that you hope will be achieved during this phase, and the comment section. And the comment section can include more detailed information on the activities, for example, who will complete them and the intended outcomes. The fourth section of the application is the project impact section. This looks at the intended geographical scope of the work, including the size of the community. There are also checkboxes on this page for you to choose the county or counties that the work is going to be done in. This will allow us at the centre to be able to track where the funds are being allocated within the province and ensure that the growth fund is being distributed equitably. It's also going to allow us to see if there are any areas of the province who haven't accessed the growth fund. And if that does happen, we'd be able to do outreach to those areas to see if there are barriers to applying or if there are ways in which the centre can help an organisation with an application. This section also asks if the neighbourhood or region in which the project is taking place is historically underserved or marginalised. If you select yes for this question, a box will appear for further explanation to be given. And that box is a required field. So if you do select yes for that question, a required box will come up for further explanation. Questions surrounding the type of housing to be targeted, as well as if there are any specific demographics that the project is specifically targeted for, are asked, and drop-down boxes with groups or demographics will appear when the response to the question, is this project designed to specifically target any groups? If that question, the response is a yes, then a drop-down box will appear with groups or demographics for you to choose which group or demographic your project specifically targets. The questions in the project impact section after the geographical scope and demographic questions do differ a little bit from stream to stream, and this is based on the goals and intended outcomes of the stream. For example, for the planning and pre-development stream, it will look to see if the project will develop new units, the impact on existing units or buildings, if it will allow the organisation to advance along the development continuum, and other things that are specific to the impact that these projects can have on the planning and pre-development work. Questions focused on how the project improves capacity within the community housing sector, knowledge transfer, as well as the potential for organisational, community and sectoral transformation are present for all of the different streams. The budget section is the next section along in this part of the application. And just for your reference, you don't have to do all of these chronologically, how they're laid out. You can jump from one section back to the other. So they don't have to be done in that order. You can go backwards and forwards between the sections. So under the budget section is where you'll first enter the amount that you're requesting from the growth fund. You would enter other financial partners that are both confirmed and unconfirmed, and this can be noted in the application status. There's a section for you to note if there are other grants available for this project. The revenue section focuses on internal and external sources of revenue for this project. If in-kind work is being donated by your organization, please enter it under internal revenue and note it in the comments that it's in-kind. If other organizations, individuals, and groups are donating in-kind services, this can go under fundraising and donations and should be noted in the comments section as well. The expenses portion of the budget is pretty straightforward and should only include the expenses related to the project that you're applying for. It includes personnel, so internal and external, direct costs for things such as travel, materials, and equipment, indirect costs for activities such as rental space and insurance. There are also sections for the administrative costs and a general section for other if you don't feel like the previously provided sections would cover well the other areas of revenue or sorry, expenses that you would be looking at submitting for. The next section is the contacts page, and this asks you to input the contacts for your organizations for the different different responsibilities, as you can see here. The contacts page allows you to search by name for contacts who may already be in our system. If a contact isn't in our system, then you do have the opportunity to create a new one. The primary and secondary contacts are the people in charge of the application with whom we'll get in touch during the evaluation of the proposal if needed. The accounting contact is the person within your organization that should be notified when a payment is issued if your project is accepted. We do recommend here that you would put in the person responsible for bookkeeping for your organization if you do have one. And the signers are two people who have authorization from your organization to take responsibility for the funds. The last section is uploading files. So for all applications, we require a copy of your incorporation document or letters patent, and then a void check. For applications under 25,000, we require the names and contact information of 2 references. These references should be organizations you've worked with in the past who can testify to your organization's capacity to complete the project. For applications between $25,001 and $50,000, we require your latest financial statement and 1 letter of reference. All of these documents can be uploaded directly onto the Portico site. So the grant process, this image shows a 360-degree view of the grant process from start to finish. So the start of it is up here, where organizations are encouraged to work with the center from their initial project conceptualization to ensure that the project they're applying for meets the priorities, objectives, and eligibility criteria of the Growth Fund. By working with organizations from the get-go and early on in their project development, we can help shape ideas that will lead to successful proposals, which is our objective. Once a project has been submitted, 2 reviews of the proposal will happen. The first review ensures that the project meets the eligibility criteria in order for it to move forwards. And the second review, which is the in-depth review, is a more detailed analysis of the project. It focuses on all aspects of the project, its financial and organizational capacity, the clarity of the request, the ability to highlight and meet existing gaps in capacity or service, the impact of the work, the demographic being served, and other key aspects in order to ensure the success of the project. After this review, the project manager may return to the applicant with suggested revisions to the project to make it a stronger project for funding, or they may make a recommendation to fund or not fund the project. This recommendation is then sent to the center's Director of Operations to validate, and once approved, the recommendation will become available to the Community Housing Growth Fund selection committees, and I will explain a little bit more about that in a minute. The selection committee will then review the application and vote on whether or not they think the project should be funded. And all applications will go to the selection committee, whether a recommendation is for funding or not. Once approved, the funding agreement is created and signed by the two representatives from the applicant organization. And then the disbursement schedule is created, as well as a reporting schedule. So this Nova Scotia Community Housing Growth Fund selection committees. For each of the grant streams, there is a separate selection committee made up of individuals with an understanding of the community housing sector, planning and pre-development, and/or research practices. Selection committees will be made up of one representative from Housing Nova Scotia, one from the centre, and 3 representatives from the community housing development and/or research and academia fields. In addition to these 3 permanent members of the selection committee, we will also have floating members who will be asked to step in to review a project if a permanent member states that they have a conflict of interest or a conflict of loyalties. Selection committee members can vote online for a project through Portico, which is a separate tab that selection committee members have access to. They can also choose to request more information or move the project to be discussed in a meeting. Consensus needs to be achieved for a project to be approved online, and a majority vote needs to be achieved for a project to be approved in a meeting. The disbursement guidelines that I mentioned earlier that would be scheduled for all projects under the capacity building stream and the planning and pre-development stream. 70% of the approved funding will be disbursed at the start of the project, and once the final report is received and approved, the remaining 30% will be released. For the research and innovation stream, this disbursement is 80% at the project start and 20% at the approval of the final report. With regards to reporting guidelines, for both the capacity building and planning and pre-development projects, if they're under 1 year, there'll be a check-in phone call at the 6-month or halfway mark, and the halfway marks would be created based upon the timeline and activities that you would input in your application. And then a written final report is required. For projects over a year, a check-in call will be done every 6 months, and an additional written progress report will be required at the halfway mark. For projects in the research and innovation stream that are for more than 1 year in duration, a phone call at the 6-month or halfway mark will be required. And for all research and innovation projects, a written final report is also required. So that is enough of me speaking. I've noted down here in the corner that if you have any technical issues, to email portico@center.support. Suzanne will be able to help you out with the technical issues surrounding Portico. And my contact information is here in the bottom left-hand corner of the page. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or give me a call. But with that, I'm going to quickly stop sharing and come back to you all. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thanks.
Can you either put the contact, you were quick on the draw there and I couldn't quite get the contact information. So
Yeah,
either
of
if you could
course.
put it in the chat or email it to us later or whatever, as long as we can get it, I guess.
Yeah, I will just pop it in the chat right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else?
I have a quick question, and I don't even know if we qualify, so I may be spending somebody's time that is of no use to me. I'm with the Freedom Foundation of Nova Scotia as a volunteer looking after housing. And we have a plan to expand our home at Brewer Street in Dartmouth, so that we can take more men off the street and put them in through recovery. Would that in any way qualify for what we're talking about here?
If you're looking to expand community housing, then yep. If there are eligible activities within there, then yes, that could definitely apply. If you want to reach out to me, we can schedule a meeting to look at exactly what it is you're looking at doing in a bit more depth and see if it would work.
Yeah, because I've gone to the point of actually getting a development permit, but we need funding and I need plans made up so that I can continue this for funding. So that's our project, is to take more men off the street and put them through.
It's fantastic.
Hopefully make them. Okay, I'll get in touch.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
Beth Earl here. I have a question. What point do you actually apply for the funding? Before you do anything? Once you, like, what is the best point to apply?
If you reach out to me, I know we've already had a conversation, Beth, but if you want to reach out to me just to discuss your application and make sure that it fits the eligibility criteria, and then once we've talked through it, then head on over to Portico. You're obviously welcome to go on to Portico and just start filling in your organizational details and contacts and things like that. But yeah, I would suggest always reaching out first and making sure that the activities that you want to do are eligible for funding.
I have a quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned at the start of the presentation about building condition assessment reports.
Yes.
That would lead me to believe that would be funding related to existing buildings. Obviously, if you're going to check out the condition of the building, how would that fit in under this program? It's not adding capacity; it's preserving and planning for what is existing. Is that covered under? If you're a nonprofit, can you apply for funding to get a building condition assessment report done of an existing facility?
Of an existing facility that you already own?
Yes.
Are you saying that you want to have an evaluation of your building in order to make it more energy efficient? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, a building condition assessment report would typically be done by an engineer. And
Okay.
it would assess what you have currently and how long that facility may last, or without renovation or up.
Any renovation.
So it's not adding capacity, it's planning and preserving for what you currently have.
In fact, the project, the funding is there to increase the capacity, but also have a transformational impact. So we don't necessarily fund operation. I'm sorry, I'm looking for my word in English. We're not funding any operation. We're only funding new projects. We'll have to discuss more about your projects in order to see what will be the impact, and if you have anything else to do. Are you doing that in order to be able to plan your renovation and then be able to increase the number of units? It all depends on what you will be what will be your project.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, what I wanted to say, and I will close my microphone after, we want to discuss with you prior for you to start writing an application form, because we don't want you to work for nothing. And what we want is to be able to work with you in order to be able to give you a yes answer at the end. So that's why it's really important that you call Allison before entering any information in your application form.
Thanks, Marie.
All right. I guess mostly it could be answered just in a call with you, Allison, but is there a link to the portico? Have you already sent that to us, or how do we get that? Thank you.
I will add that into the chat, or maybe Renee, if you wouldn't mind
Yeah,
adding it into
I
the
can
chat.
do that, Allison.
Lovely,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, and I noticed that Angela replied to a question in the chat that says no one organization can apply for more than one stream. Is that
So-
true? Like, because the streams are meant for different things.
Yeah, no, the response was that no, an organization can apply for more than one stream.
Oh, can
So,
apply, yes.
yeah,
My apology,
so
my apology.
no, that's quite right. Thank you for asking that, Angela. Yes, so organizations are eligible to apply for different streams. The activities have to be distinct. So there can't be overlap between them. They would need to be distinct activities. It could be for the same project, but the activities have to be distinct. So if you were looking at working to develop a new piece of land, you wanted to increase organizational capacity with your board, and potentially do some training within the board, look at the strategic development and the strategic planning, that could fall under the capacity building side of it. But then underneath the planning and pre-development side of it would be the development of the plans, the reports, the site surveys, and things like that. So one project can look at different streams of funding, but the activities have to be very distinct from one another.
Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a question. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I sure can.
Okay, great, thanks. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to sign in time. I might have missed the information on regarding which projects would be suitable for this particular type of funding. What I'm looking at building in Dartmouth is there's a parcel of land that my partner and I have, and we're looking at building 27 units that are going to be the smaller, so studio style or 1-bedroom units, 275 square feet, fully furnished, all services. And it's meant for those individuals that are at risk of homelessness or are homeless and they can't find suitable housing because they don't have references and so on and so on. And so this would be an opportunity for them to live independently and eventually be able to rent somewhere else on their own. So this particular project, I don't know what the cap is, like it's 27 units. What type of expenses would qualify under this program? Any of the building costs per unit?
No, none of the building costs. This doesn't fund the actual construction activities. It would fund activities leading up to the construction phase.
Oh, okay.
And up to $50,000 for the capacity building and the planning and pre-development.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so this would definitely qualify for that type of funding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what if we've already paid for architectural designs? Is it too late to get funding for that?
The fund doesn't cover any activities that have already taken place.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's typical. Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie, if you want to if you want to reach out to me, my email address is in the chat. I'd be more than happy to schedule a meeting with you to discuss this further and see where it would fit in with the funding.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Sounds like a great project.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's in the works right now. We're working with the city they have an adjacent property that they own, which will give us what we need to get a permit approved.
Great. I look forward to hearing about it.
Right on.
I had a question which I think I know the answer to, but I just wanted to double check. Community land trusts, I assume, are eligible as nonprofits. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? So, hi, Connie.
Funny here. Would you just talk a little bit about how you envision projects either in capacity building addressing systemic barriers or in planning and pre-development addressing barriers to access capital and federal funding? What kind of, there are lots of barriers, but the barriers that I would see, a lot of the addressing them would involve significant and sustained advocacy. Which is, so I just wondered what would be in the scope of those projects and what might not.
I think under the capacity building, for especially because you're right, it's that advocacy piece is helping to address the systemic barriers. Increasing awareness, obviously within the board, within the organization, but increasing the capacity of the board or the organization to reduce stigma, increase awareness within the community and things like that. And some of that would be done very organically, just through increasing the awareness within the board. I mean, I know that most board members are already very aware of the barriers. And in terms of the planning and pre-development, your question was with regards to, was it the leveraging
Addressing
funds?
barriers. Again, addressing barriers.
Yeah. I think the biggest one there would be the actual development of units. Okay. Because if there was that development of the units, most community housing groups would be looking at targeting those units towards some of the groups who face increased barriers. And obviously one of the two of the biggest barriers are affordability and availability. So, okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Alison.
Okay. Were there any other questions?
A question on the chat from Angela.
Thank you. So Angela's question is related to how the limits are set. If you have more than one project or building, can you apply per project or building to the same stream? Or are the limits per organization for each stream? If you have more than one project or building, then yes, you could apply to the same stream. Like I mentioned, the activities would have to be, there can't be overlap within them. They would need to be distinct, separate projects with no overlap. So yeah, you could technically apply for more than one stream, for more than one project.
I think someone just asked this question, but I was looking at the portico site, so I didn't hear the answer. So we can match this with other like CMHC programs or FCM programs.
Absolutely, yes, that would be ideal. This is very much stackable with other funding, and hopefully it can work hand in hand with other funding resources that are out there. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. What's maximum stacking? I mean, for us, if you need the full 50,000 to make your project work, and that's the gap that you have identified in funding, when you're working with other funding organizations, then you can apply to us for 50,000. In terms of the like CMHC and FCM and other funding organizations, I can't speak on their behalf, but in terms of the growth fund for maximum stacking, if you need that 50,000, then that would be the amount that you should be applying for.
So you can still apply for the full 100%. It's not going to be, if all public funding is going into the project, there's no maximum level.
Not from our viewpoint, no. If that's the gap in your funding is 48,750, then you should apply for that.
Great.
Yeah. Julie,
Allison,
sorry,
it's
go.
Earl here. I've got a question just in terms of new groups that are starting out, not for profits, haven't been to the point of actually receiving revenue under a certain umbrella or getting incurring expenses. So to go from the 25,000 to the 50,000, it mentions that to qualify for up to 50, you need the latest financial statement. Are there situations where there, is that a requirement or for a new organization?
Okay. I'm going to defer this question to Marie. Just for the record, Marie is our Director of Operations. So I'm going to pass this along to her because she has most likely dealt with this situation in the past.
In a case like this one, what we do, we will ask a budget that has been approved by the board, and we will put a condition in the approval saying that you will need to get your last disbursement to send us your financial statement, because I suppose your project will last at least 1 year, so you should have at least first annual financial statements. But that's the way we've been looking at it so far. We had a few cases like that.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. And secondly, for groups that have hired consultants to help them through, so affordable housing groups, in terms of accessing the portico and filling out the application, is there a means that can be done for the group by the consultant, although the group would actually forward the application itself?
Yeah, sorry, go on, Marie.
The group has to send the application itself, but they can have someone that fills the information. Renee,
Okay.
am I right? Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, as long as the application comes from the group and it's in the group's name and so on,
Yes.
a consultant can provide the information, write the stuff inside on the portico. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Mia, I'm going to get you in just a second. There was a question in the chat. What is the approval timeframe and distribution timeframe? Renee has responded and said the centre's goal is to process applications in 60 days. However, this will depend on whether or not additional information is required from the applicant. Our goal is to get these applications processed and turned around as quickly as possible. So that 60 days would be the top of the time frame, but that does include.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, that does include going back to the organizations.
Yes,
so
exactly.
If we require more information from you and send this back to you with an email saying just need more information, or could you expand on this, and say if it takes the organization we've gone back to 45 days to get back to us, then obviously that 60-day time frame isn't going to be realistic.
And I would add just one thing. You were at some point 47 participants. If every person in this webinar is putting an application in, we will need, we have only a limited personnel to be able to help. So it might be a bit longer, but we'll do everything we can. And so far we've been quite excellent at this, on this point at the center.
There's a second question related to in the chat related to information resources such as emails and so on. Will that be forwarded to the group? Allison, can.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I believe that we can get the attendee, the webinar attendee email addresses, so we can send out the PowerPoint presentation and other information like email addresses to everybody who's been on this webinar. Okay. So, Mia, thank you for waiting so patiently.
No, that's no problem. I thank you so much for this. I'll send you just a quick email about finding the time to walk through, but I thought I would just check. So, because when you're saying that there are two unrelated projects, so one would be on the internal capacity to have someone leading YWCA Halifax's housing development initiatives. So some of those are specific to Part B, which would be the other project, but some are others. So as an example, we've been approached by two different churches around using their space. And so this, like in my mind, I'm the executive director, and so I know a lot on the go all the time, and I'd love to have someone dedicated to advancing housing on the YWCA side and responding to these opportunities. But on in the second stream would be specifically professional fees, specifically tied to one project. And so A will have a connection to B, but they're actually not, they're Venn diagrams. There's an overlap, but they're not completely distinct. So I don't know, how do you consider those?
Could we have a chat about this, your specific case? I'm just, because I think in terms of that, and because you were a little bit hard to hear, it was a little bit broken up. What I'm thinking you're saying is that the capacity building would be for the hiring of somebody to develop that capacity with the YWCA to get involved more in affordable housing development. Is that correct? But then in B, it would be the professional skills that person would require. So like, are you anticipating that the person in stream A would be responsible for doing the planning and pre-development and all of those other activities?
Yes and no. So so let's say stream one is a staff member who comes on board as an organization, and they're going to work on A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And application 2 is professional fees related to project B. And so, and project B involves that person plus a whole other team of people. So like I said, there's some overlap, but they're not exactly, it's not the same.
I think it would all depend if within the planning and pre-development, you were also applying for the expenses related to salary for the person in A. I think in that case, we would really have to look more into the individual details with regards to that. Because I think there's a potential for the overlap there to be a little bit too great. I definitely understand what you're saying about that overlap and how it's just naturally occurring. But it would need to maybe be looked at to how that could be teased apart a little bit more. If you want to set up a meeting, Mia, we could maybe have a look at that in a bit more depth.
Yeah, I sent you a meeting invite already.
There's a few questions related to information. Allison, one question is about will the recording be shared? The next is, will the slide decks be shared? And then there's, if you get new questions that have answers that could help the rest of us, would you circulate those answers to everyone?
Yes, the slide deck will be shared. Yes, the meeting will be shared, and absolutely, we will provide any information to you all that could help you and your project. So if other people have questions, then we can share out the questions and the responses. Yeah, I agree. Tomi, I hope I'm not pronouncing your name wrong. Definitely nice to have similar case studies to learn from. I agree.
Tommy has sent a message. Would be nice to have similar case studies to learn from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Nancy has a question in the chat as well. As a new nonprofit, having received funding from the Transformation Center, I can attest to the helpfulness of the staff, the ease of applying, and the speed of receiving funds, I suggest we recommend your model procedures and philosophy to the CMHC. Sorry, I thought it was a question. But thank you, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Nancy.
Well appreciated.
I feel like I was tooting my own horn there, but thank you, Nancy. That's really appreciated.
So were there any other questions with regards to this fund? I know that the invite on Eventbrite was for 2 hours. We didn't want to have to limit the amount of questions we could respond to, which is why we put it out there for a longer period of time. But if there are no other questions, give it a couple of seconds in case something comes to somebody's mind.
I have just one information to give you. It might be not relevant, but all the documentation is available in French if ever there is French-speaking groups that wants to apply in the French language as possible.
Thank you, Marie. Allison, I have a comment more than a question. Just want to thank you and your colleagues for putting this on today. It was most helpful, and look forward to working with you in the future. I'll probably give you a call next week.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, everybody.
And for your information, we will put the information, the webinar, the link to the webinar and the PowerPoint presentation could be available on our website. Sabine, who's just there and she's making this, she's the webmaster, so she will make sure that the information will be on our website if ever you need the information and you have lost the link that Allison or Renee would have sent you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'm really looking forward to working with some of you, or hopefully all of you, at some point in the future. I hope you enjoy this weekend. The weather's supposed to be unseasonably warm, so make the most of it. And yeah, look forward to speaking with some of you in the future. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Hope to read you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.